So we've come to the 20th Sunday of the year, and the battle is engaged. In a way, the Lord has an urgency in this gospel, and a lot of people like to think the word gospel means good news, and while that's not totally inaccurate, it isn't so much that it's good news, but that it's life-changing news. Whether the message is cheerful or not, it's life-changing. It's transformative because the gospel, the scriptures, are a prophetic declaration of reality. They tell us what's really going on. And sometimes they're a little unsettling, but it's still good news in the sense of being life-changing. What's really going on. All this, euphemisms and nuances and just outright lies that go on in the world are kind of set aside. The Lord's pretty direct. And that's certainly true in this gospel. I want to look at this gospel in three parts. So we'll begin as we look at this battle that's about to unfold. He's going towards Jerusalem, and this is his, in the Synoptic Gospels, his final trip to Jerusalem before the Passion. In fact, it's on this final trip that the Passion will be engaged, as well as the resurrection. So let's begin with the Lord. He has here kind of a passion to purify. Jesus simply says here, I've come to set a fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already blazing. Powerful, statement. Fire, what an image, But first of all, notice the urgency. I'm not just coming to I hope everyone would get along, and, I'm hoping that people will be nice. I've come to engage a battle against the evil one. No compromises. I have to win this victory. And my people need to follow me, and they need to do so without compromise. We're in war. This is a battle. Satan and his minions, as well as the other fallen angels and demons, they're at war with us. And we're like, oh, maybe we can get along. And Jesus will have none of that. He says there's a battle to engage. So he says, I have come to cast a fire on the earth. And how I wish the fire were already blazing. Now, at one level, a fire, of course, is powerful. It's transformative. Fire can give warmth. It can make our food more palatable. But it also consumes and destroys. It burns away things. I guess the bottom line is that nothing goes away from fire unchanged. We have to respect fire. It can bless us or it can burn us. But you got to respect fire, see. And there's a lot of people today who are not very respectful of God, who is a holy fire, as the scriptures teach, a refining fire, a consuming fire, These things are said of God in the Old Testament as well as the New. And we see that there's a respect that is due to fire, and there's a respect that's due to God, and we ought not to trivialize him. This image of fire, again, anything to do with fire, or any purification whatsoever, whether it's by fire or some other means, is seldom very easy or painless. I don't know if you've ever had to have something cauterized. I one time had a blood vessel that was consistently bleeding, and had to the doctor had to cauterize it, took a hot thing and cauterized it, and that was hard for a minute there, but it worked. It worked. So again, this image of fire is important because I'm afraid today that many people have reduced faith to just seeking enrichments and blessings. It's kind of a therapeutic faith. That it's all about me being blessed and feeling better. And look, that can be certainly an aspect of faith. But faith should also unsettle us a bit and say, look, you're going the wrong direction, man. And you got to do a U-E because, you're heading off a cliff. And so again, if faith has both these aspects, it can be very comforting. As the old saying goes, it can comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And we're all a little bit of both. And there are times when faith needs to unsettle us and remind us of eternal verities, that we can't just go on, having dessert first, so to speak, and celebrating, as if we weren't going to ever face death or judgment. So faith will console, it instructs, it helps, it is therapeutic. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's therapeutic in the way, in the way that we'll see later on in the gospel today, a surgeon's scalpel is, You got to inflict pain to bring a little bit of healing. So this is why this image of fire is important for us. This is no campfire, right? This is a consuming fire. This is burning up and burning away the impurities and leaving pure gold. It's a refining fire, a purifying fire. And that's what we want to see here emphasized with this. I don't know, most of you know the refining process, but to purify gold and silver and so on, gold and silver seldom come out of the ground, it's pure gold. They're all mixed in with other iron ore and different stuff. And so what you have to do is kind of subject it to fire, literally kind of melt the rock down and let it, the specific gravities of the different metals and things, you can scrape off the impurities. Some of them are burnt away. I'm not here to teach you about refining because I only know a little bit about it. But just to say that refining something means subjecting it to a fire. Okay? And it comes out pure, but first the fire. So God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, but the fire next time. Okay, now we go to the second point. Not only is there a passion that the Lord has to purify, but there's a painful path that he has to go through. He says, there is a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it's completed. So Jesus is our commander, if you will. He's leading us through this war, this battle. And he's not sitting back at headquarters, sipping on coffee and God knows what else. He's on the point. He's on the point of the spear, or some of the soldiers say in reconnaissance. He's on point. He's at the front, and he's not sitting in some comfortable position. As I say back there, he didn't so much come to just get us out of trouble. He came to get into trouble with us, and so again, he doesn't exempt himself. He has a painful path to go through. He's going to endure great suffering for us, and. But having won the victory, then he's going to turn to us and say, now follow me in the way I've gone. So I went up over the hill of Calvary, and I rose gloriously on the third day. And so you too have your Calvaries to endure. You have a hill to climb. But on the other side, our joy is unspeakable and glory is untold. But follow me. And so he has a painful path. And even as painful as the cross can be for us, or this image of fire, or all the stuff we've talked about so far, the Lord did not exempt himself. He's not sitting back at headquarters issuing commands. He's at the Father's right hand now, but he still suffers in his mystical body, the church. Now look, Jesus is not exempt. He never exempted himself. Nobody suffered like Jesus. All right. So we see that there's a passion to purify that he has. Come to cast fire on the earth. And there is a very painful path he has to trod. A baptism, a baptism into death and resurrection. A baptism which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. And then we come to this sort of the end of the gospel, this piercing purification, kind of a penetrating or piercing purification. And this is perhaps the most shocking of all, because, what's the fourth commandment if it isn't to say, honor your father and your mother, which by extension means all lawful authority, but also honor, love your brothers and sisters, your siblings, and other family members. This is a pretty important principle, but the fourth commandment is less important than the first commandment. And the Lord is kind of invoking that here. The first commandment is the first commandment for a reason. You shall have no other gods. Nothing is more important than I am, says the Lord. And he's not an egomaniac. He's saying this to us for our good, because there are so many lesser lights out there that can mislead us. And he's saying, you've got to keep your eyes on me. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. And even sometimes parents, you owe them honor and respect, but even parents sometimes can let you down. And if a parent were ever to say to you, do something contrary to what I've commanded, you have to say, sorry, Mom, sorry, Dad, I love God more. See, and so let's look at that. Jesus says, do you think I've come to establish peace on the earth? I tell you, rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. A father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, and a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. boom, the gospel ends. The gospel of the Lord, praise you. The good news. Well, okay, it's good news. But the main point is that it's life-changing. You see, because otherwise we get all caught up in who do I owe loyalty to here? Number one, always God. Everything else is underneath that, you see. Now, what we have here, though, is, I think, first of all, let's look at it. It's literal. In the early church, an awful lot of Christians were disowned. A lot of the Jewish Christians were kicked out of synagogues because they'd accepted Christ. Their families and others disowned them. It was pretty hard, and much harder than today, because families and synagogues and these things, that was your social security net. That was your safety net. And you're on your own now, buddy. You can't you can't be depending on that anymore. Woo. And so it was a very, very devastating thing to be, quote, kicked out of the synagogue. Most people today say, who cares if the church kicked me out? I'll just go do my own thing. But back then, you got kicked out of the synagogue or what have you. A lot of your safety net went away. Okay. So this is very painful words, but a lot of Christians endured it. Even those who weren't martyrs, but they endured being kicked out of their families, synagogues, other social organizations, jobs, things they depended on, right? Kind of that white martyrdom, right? The red martyrdom of death, the white martyrdom of confessing the faith and suffering greatly. So that's the literal meaning of this. Now, I too, maybe you as well, have personally met people who, once they decided to become Christian or Catholic, their family was just furious with them. And at best, they were barely on speaking terms. At worst, they were completely cut off. I've seen this happen, and many of you have too. It still goes on today, and not as widespread as it used to be, because we live in this culture that's like, come see, come saw, but if that floats your boat, which is kind of the other extreme, right? But again, we want to see that this is sometimes literally experienced. However, more allegorically, or in an extended sense, this idea of all this division, father against son, son against father, and so on, is the Lord is telling us to set aside all these worldly notions of compromise and coexistence with evil. All right? He's saying, and so often that's our main strategy. Let's just compromise. Let's just coexist with, all kinds of craziness. And, this is the idea. Now, I want to just tell you something. Some of you have heard me say this in church before, that I want to assure you, if you think compromise is going to get you anywhere with this world or the devil, the world and the devil will never be satisfied until every last ounce of your integrity is gone. Okay, yeah. So be careful with this idea. We may have to sometimes tolerate stuff we can't do much about. I can't control everybody's life out there, right? But I'm not going to settle down and just say, well, it's okay if people are living together outside of marriage, or people are calling, same-sex marriage a marriage. If some people are out there saying, a boy can give, a boy's a girl, or can be a girl, or, that men can have babies, and I'm sorry, I can't, I'm not going to compromise with that stuff. It's a lie. It's a lie. All right, now, I don't want to get into all the issues, but the point is that the Lord is setting aside here this idea of coexisting with evil in some kind of a blanket case, and likewise just compromising, right? You can come to the Thanksgiving dinner, but just don't mention God, religion, or anything that we don't want to hear, about moral issues. So you see what happens to us sometimes. All right, so maybe another image here, since you've used the image of fire already, but fire and water don't mix. There's going to be a conflict between the two of them, right? They're basic elements, fire and water, and they come together, and you'll hear the conflict. You drop water on a hot stove, well, I'm going to tell you right now, you hear the sizzle. Or a lot of water on a little bit of fire, out goes the fire, but they will not coexist in the same spot. And truth and lies and goodness and evil ultimately cannot coexist. And the Lord is reminding us that there has to be finally a division. We might work to avoid it. We might try to discuss things, but at the end of the day, if anyone ever tells you to deny Christ or to deny one of his teachings just to keep the peace, don't. You can't. So he goes on to say here, he speaks to us of, do you think I've come for peace? No, rather the division or the sword, right? He says that in in Matthew's version, the parallel version of this in Matthew. He says, do you think I came not for peace, but for the sword, or in other words, division? But think here for a minute before you just think of this, kind of battle sword. Think of another kind of a sword, if you will. Think of a surgeon's scalpel. Now, I think medically we can see how if there's a malignant cancer, you can't coexist with that. You can't compromise. It has to go. See? And that's a pretty good analogy for what the Lord is trying to say here to us. So a surgeon, they may use radiation and chemo, but at the end of the day, the surgeon's probably going to have to go in there with a sword or a scalpel, cut away and divide out the diseased flesh from the healthy flesh. Debride the wound, close it up, and throw that cancer away. Okay? And this is an image, for us. We just maybe at the end we can all just kind of get along, and, this is how we are. But if you see this kind of an analogy of cancer, I'm talking about malignant cancer, not some benign little tumor. I'm talking about cancer. It's got to go, or it's going to win. In a way, it's going to lose, because if you die, so does it. But the point is, you see the vision here, right? There's this, you can't coexist with malignant cancer. It has to go. And we cannot go on coexisting with evil, cooperating, or compromising, and certainly not cooperating with evil. All right. Now there are times where we can't do much about things. I can't go and make everybody behave, but you see the idea here, right? All right, that we can't, directly be asked to coexist with evil. We have to stand up and say, no, it's wrong. I won't do it. But a lot of people don't. They go along. All right. So here's this great cosmic battle then, but think of that surgeon's scalpel. The Lord is about healing, not about just dividing up and getting people to fight. That's not the point. The point is healing. But you have to debride. You have to cut away and debride a wound. It cannot go on just oozing away. All right. So in this great cosmic battle, the Lord cannot and will not tolerate a false peace, based on compromise with error or lies or sin. Okay, and that's what he's saying here. He's asking us to see that this is kind of the lay of the land. So I'm going to finish up here now, but we've seen that the Lord says, I've come to cast a fire on the earth. So there's a passion to purify that he has. Okay, but he knows it's going to be painful, not just for us who need the purification, but for him. Think of that surgeon again. Some of those surgeons, man, especially those emergency surgeons, they're there at those trauma centers, and somebody comes in at 2 a.m., and they're bleeding out of some aortic aneurysm or whatever. They're going right to work. They might be there for 6-8 hours on that surgery theater. Wow. Sacrifices to bring healing, right? Well, the Lord went far beyond that, see. And he suffered like nobody's ever suffered. So he not only has a passion to purify, but he has a painful path himself. And he says to us, now I'm asking you to follow me in the way of the cross. You won't suffer like I did. But you have to understand you're not going to get out of this world without any scuffs or scrapes or bruises. It's just not possible, because this world is too inimical to a person of faith. If they've hated me, they're going to hate you. You'll have tribulation, but have confidence. I've overcome the world. So follow me up this path of Calvary. We're going over and into the promised land. Very good. And then finally, again, there is this piercing purification. He says, now, part of that means you might even have to experience painful things at the very heart of your life, in your family, among the people you love most and depend on most. You may find that you just cannot go along, and they may decide, you're out. Follow me anyway. I know it hurts. Again, we turn faith into a kind of a therapeutic thing today, merely a therapeutic thing. And faith is going to challenge us, and faith is going to hurt. Now, it's not always pleasant. But God wants me to be happy, doesn't he? Yes. It's like a surgeon wants you to be happy, after the surgery. We got to go through the surgery. Well, enough said. So we have here a gospel that's kind of like, get your head on straight about this stuff and realize this is no game. We're at war. And there's going to have to be a winning team and a losing team. Fire and water can't coexist. One's going to win, the other's going to lose. Now, get on the winning team. It's nice to know ahead of time. We know the winning team. That's Jesus. We know it ahead of time. So you'd be a fool to play on any other team, but it's not always going to be cheery and wonderful. We're living in paradise lost. And it's going to take a while to fight and claw ourselves out of here by God's grace. So the Lord is saying, we got to be sober about this stuff. Okay, urgent, sober, let's go. And even if it affects your deepest relationships in your family, you still got to go with me. Let's go, and let's not delay. I've come to cast a fire on the earth. Let's get started. Amen.